Let's not sugarcoat it. 28 Years Later is one of the most compelling, haunting, emotionally raw films to come out in years, horror or otherwise. And the fact that it's being swept aside, dismissed by some fans of 28 Days Later and 28 Weeks Later as boring, slow, or not what they wanted, is not just frustrating, it's an absolute tragedy. Because they're not just missing the point, they're missing the art. This film is a triumph of restraint, vision, and evolution. It dares to grow the story, not repeat what came before, but to ask, what does it mean to live in the long, aching shadow of a horrifying catastrophe that never really ended? Let's start with what's impossible to ignore, the cast. This ensemble isn't just good, they're a revelation. Every glance, every breath, every moment of silence feels lived in. These aren't actors performing, they're survivors enduring. Alfie Williams, Jodie Comer, and Aaron Taylor Johnson are absolutely fantastic. They feel like real people, and their struggles feel relatable, understandable, and inarguably human. The acting is honest, raw, and completely stripped of vanity. It's not clean or cinematic in the traditional sense. It's jagged, broken, and beautifully uncomfortable. People stammer, break down mid-sentence, flinch at sounds off-screen. You feel their fear. You feel their exhaustion. These aren't characters surviving jump scare moments. They're surviving trauma. And for once, a horror film has the guts to sit in that. Ray Fiennes doesn't just steal the show, he tears it apart and stitches it back together with his bare hands. His portrayal is equal parts haunted philosopher, concerned physician, and reluctant warrior. He's not a caricature of a post-apocalyptic man. He's what it actually looks like when a human being carries the weight of nearly 3 decades of collapse on his shoulders. The score deserves its own video essay as well. It doesn't just underscore the film, it haunts it. Swells of eerie ambiance, pulses of dread, waves of grief-laced calm that give way to explosions of chaotic, almost spiritual dissonance. It's the sound of time passing in a broken world. It's the soundtrack of people trying to make sense of what little they have left. Young Fathers, the group behind the film's music, feels like a fever dream that somehow got turned into an audible nightmare. And then there's the story, which, let's be clear, is brilliant. Because it doesn't play the cheap sequel game. It doesn't try to outgun the kinetic frenzy of 28 Weeks Later or replay the crude elegance of 28 Days Later. Instead, it does something smarter. It expands the universe organically. The virus didn't go away. Society didn't miraculously rebuild. This isn't a redemption arc. It's a slow, aching examination of what happens decades after the world breaks. What does community look like when the maps are meaningless and every day is a negotiation between memory and survival? It feels like the same world but buried under time, rot, and silence. The pacing, the grainy cinematography, the weight of every moment. It's like walking through the ruins of something you once knew and realizing the echoes are still alive. It's a spiritual sequel more than a direct one, and that's the brilliance of it. And let's talk about the horror, because anyone saying this movie isn't scary needs to seriously rewatch it with fresh eyes. This isn't popcorn horror, this is existential horror. The kind that makes you sweat, not because of what jumps out, but because of what doesn't. It's the long, still shots of abandoned farmland, the quiet breathing in a pitch-black shelter, the sudden, feral screech in the distance that tells you, it's not over, it never was. And the infected? Holy hell. The classic rage-infected still terrify. They're primal, relentless, and unreasoning. But now, the film introduces us to evolution. We've got bloated, slow, decaying variants that feel more like living corpses than virus-fueled maniacs, and they are absolutely horrifying in their own way. Swollen, slumped, dragging themselves through shadows like they've become part of the land itself. And just when you think the film has settled into a slow burn groove, boom, the alphas arrive. These aren't just stronger, they're smarter, sharper. It's as if the virus finally figured out how to weaponize evolution. These are monsters that move like apex predators, fast, terrifying, coordinated. They have presence, and when they appear, you know things are about to go sideways. It's a terrifying, exciting shift that reminds you this isn't the same game anymore. That alone would have been enough, but the fact that the film never over-explains these variants, that's masterful. It trusts the audience to get it, to feel it, to see the results of mutation and time, not get spoon-fed exposition. That's rare. The only thing we're really told, at least as far as the alphas go, is that the virus began to behave like a steroid for some of the infected as time went on, and that's all we need to know to be filled with not just the horrors of the ever-mutating rage virus, but the suggestion of these mutations being that there will always be new threats emerging going forward. The visual storytelling is so tight, so confident. Long takes of decayed churches, rusted-out buses, overgrown streets reclaimed by moss and rain. There's a beauty here, a cruel, indifferent beauty. It's a kind of cinematic poetry that few modern horror films even attempt. And then, that final act, devastating, honest, relentless, a crescendo of emotion that doesn't play to cheap sentimentality. It's painful, yes, but also deeply human. Sacrifice, redemption, the ache of loss, the refusal to give up even when everything tells you to. It's a haunting, melancholic close that echoes the 28 Days Later finale. But older, wiser, more broken, and more real. You want to talk about art house horror? This is it. This is what it looks like when a filmmaker respects the genre enough to elevate it without abandoning it. It's grit meets grace, carnage meets contemplation. And to top it all off, it's only the beginning of a new trilogy. The next film, The Bone Temple, is already shaping up to be something monumental. And with the promise of Cillian Murphy returning, that's the full circle payoff fans should be salivating for. That's legacy. That's emotional payoff built on decades of world building. But here's the part that stings. This movie deserves better. It deserves a standing ovation, not a shrug. It deserves box office success, critical reverence, and a goddamn seat at the modern horror table. So to the people saying it's not what they wanted, good. That's the point. It's what the story needed, and what horror needed, and it'll be studied and appreciated long after the noise dies down. At least, that's what I hope. Because 28 years later isn't a rehash. It's not fan service. It's not trying to be cool. It's the soul of the 28 Days Later franchise, aged like whiskey and wrapped in barbed wire. And that crazy Power Rangers-style acid trip ending was absolutely insane in the best way possible, and I am so here for it. Also, I've got to know, which alpha do you think would win in a fight, Samson or the Berserker? Let me know in the comments below, and let me know what you thought of 28 Years Later. Thanks for watching.